Welcome to Ridgecrest Talk. I'm your host, Tonia Pyle, with our guest today, Dian Schneider of Hearts Connection out of Bakersfield.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us here today in Ridgecrest. I know you had other reasons for being here in Ridgecrest as well, so we were glad we could get some of your time.
Yeah,
This is such a valuable organization. It's an acronym, Hearts. And so the first time someone saw a piece of mail when I had first contacted your organization, I think they were looking at my mail thinking, oh, Tonia's doing a singles something
we got
or
a lot of
other.
funny stories about that.
I'm sure you do. So she found out that it was an appropriate public affairs, and so she let me off the hook and gave me my mail, for heaven's sakes. But what is the acronym? Actually, before we get to the acronym, tell me about what you do specifically for Hearts Connection.
Kind of a little bit of everything, as we all do. We actually have 5 employees right now, and we do serve all of Kern County.
Large county.
Yeah, it's a big county. Ridgecrest in the desert is all part of my catchment. And what I do specifically is, my specialty is special education law. And so we assist families. I do trainings in special ed law. I go to meetings. We also help them find resources, information, referrals if they have had trouble with the system, getting into the system. And then if they say somebody applies to Regional Center or Social Security and doesn't get in, we can help them with the appeal. So anything related to special needs.
And the reason why when you talk about the system, you're talking about the school system, I presume.
Anything.
With any
Kern Regional Center, schools, Social Security, anything related to special needs.
Okay. So if they're not being able to hook up, you're there to assist them in that regard.
Yeah, sometimes it's finding someone to help them, but sometimes we can do it too.
So you're our go-to person in Ridgecrest. Not in Ridgecrest, but for Ridgecrest.
And I also have people here that I work with that can help too. So.
Volunteers. Because your office, I think you said, is no longer here.
Correct.
Okay.
We no longer have our...
That's a shame.
Our only office right now is... I'm sorry, we have 2. So we've got the Bakersfield office, and somebody donated space to us in Delano. But other than that, we're just wherever we get... Catch as catch can. So Tatchby meets in a mobile home park, like the common area.
Yes. Clubhouse or something of that
That's
nature.
That's the word I can think of. So, it's just wherever we can get, in Lake Isabella, we meet in a coffee shop because they let us use the back room. So it's wherever we can catch some space.
Good. Okay, so we'll talk about that too, because I will bring that up later as well, because I know you're looking for some space where people can meet and bring their issues, concerns, support.
Or their great moments.
Or their great moments to share, yes. And so let's talk about the acronym of Hearts Connection.
Hearts, I should tell you, Hearts was founded by families, 12 families, 26 years ago this year.
Okay. Is it national or is it?
We're countywide.
Okay.
There's other people like us around the state.
Okay.
And we're part of a network.
Okay.
But we are an individual entity.
This is a Kern County organization.
Kern County organization. And actually we do serve in Yamano also. In the last 2 years we picked up grants there.
Okay.
So we're serving birth to 3 in Yamano.
Okay. But, okay, so, but it's not the county. You don't work for the county.
No.
That's just
our
serves
catchment area.
the county. It serves the county services.
We serve the same area as the Kern Regional Center.
Okay.
That's our catchment.
Okay, so Hearts is, H is help, E, encouragement.
Encourage.
Encourage.
It's help, encourage, advocate, resources, training, support.
Okay, very good.
I'd do it better if I just do it like that.
Good,
So.
thank you.
Yeah.
It would have taken me a while, counting on all fingers. But so now I wanted to ask you about your target group, and I know you don't turn anyone away who is looking for service, for help, but who would be the bulk of who can benefit most from your experience?
Well, sometimes it's not about what we can give them, it's about what they can give to other families.
Okay.
So I look for families at all ends of the spectrum. So new families coming in, maybe newly diagnosed, or a newborn that's newly diagnosed. Sometimes they don't, kids don't get diagnosed till 9, 10, 11.
Diagnosed with
anything. If I've got kids on my caseload with severe asthma, I've got kids on my caseload on vents, I've got kids with the classic learning disability, I have kids with autism, Down syndrome, rare syndromes, mental retardation. I've got a gifted child who's blind. It's everything. If you can imagine it and it's a special need for a child and creates a barrier, then that's who we serve.
do you get many dyslexics in that group?
Well, that's not the word the schools use, so we don't hear that word a whole lot unless they've been medically diagnosed. They come to the schools with a label of learning disability in the area of reading. That's how the schools call it. Because the dyslexia is actually a medical diagnosis, and schools can't diagnose. So, but yeah, my nephew actually has dyslexia.
Well,
so.
you didn't really hear that term until I wasn't really familiar with that term, particularly until after I was an adult. I mean, right? And then it seemed like it became very common. And I was surprised.
It's been around forever.
It has been around. Of course, there are many historic figures who notoriously...
ADHD is kind of more recently
ADHD is another
acknowledged.
one. And that's changed terms, I think, a couple times as well.
It used to be ADD or ADHD. Now it's ADHD, but there's 3 subtypes.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, so that pretty much covers, but it's if they have to have maybe additional equipment or...
Well, we can help them, certainly.
Yes.
We're called a resource and referral agency. So we can provide resources, or we can help them access resources, or we can refer them out to other people who can give them what they need.
Okay.
But there's like nobody we turn away. Like I said, we might divert them to someone else if something's more appropriate. We happened for a while to be next to the HEAP office. They moved. But we got a lot of people in there looking for help with their utilities, and it's a good example. We just turned them around the corner. Sometimes, you know, they're just, with the oil industry the way it is, there's a lot of people just looking for any kind of help, and so they call us, but we hook them up into things like the Gleaners and Catholic Services, things like that.
Well, we have just a few seconds before we go on break, but for a family who's had a newborn and then they've been diagnosed with a special need, I don't know how you want to refer to that, but I'm sure they need a lot of encouragement. So when we come back from our break, we'll get into that. Thank you so much. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk with our Hearts Connection guest, Dian Schneider. And so we were talking about, what were we talking about, Dian? Well, the people who need help or can benefit the most with your services. And so, help me out here. You said that
our target audience is families who have children with special needs, but we serve anybody with special needs. So, you know, some people come just for information. Maybe they're newly diagnosed and they just want the facts right now. Some people come in because they need a shoulder to cry on.
I was going to say, if you just have a newborn and you have this kind of diagnosis, I'm sure it's very difficult for the parents.
What if you have a 10-year-old with a new diagnosis? Because a lot of our kids will get diagnoses
it's
over their
developmental.
lifetimes.
Oh, all right.
So a lot of kids with high-functioning autism don't get diagnosed until they're somewhere between 8 and 11. Some dads get diagnosed when their child gets diagnosed. It can happen to anybody at any time. You know, I have a child that has been diagnosed with asthma her whole life. We just found out she actually has a rare syndrome. And that's what causes the asthma-like condition. So we get, and so, you know, that family was dealing with one thing, and now they're dealing with a whole new experience. So yeah, we whoever needs us when they need us, we're there.
You're there to help them find the resources that can help them.
And to offer the support, get them the information, hook them up to another family if that's what they want.
I was saying, I think probably the biggest, or one of the biggest concerns, there's a lot of concerns, but I mean, they're worried about the other kids in the family, things of this relating.
Yes.
And I know you have a lot of functions for the entire family. I noticed that on your calendar, but we'll get to that. But for someone who's worried about their child's future, how do you go forward with maybe Down syndrome? How do you plan your future? So you do this IEP, and you were explaining that to me.
IEP is schools. It's individual education plan. And from birth to 3, you have what's called an IFSP. It's an individual family service plan.
Okay.
And so that's doing what we call early intervention.
From birth to school?
Birth to 3.
Oh, birth to 3.
It's an IFSP. So we're looking at the family, we're serving the family, trying to meet all of their needs so that they can meet their child's needs. Because sometimes the family's situation itself is a barrier to helping their own child. So from birth to 3, that's why we look at the whole family. But we're trying to get in and give those children skills that if we wait until they're 3 or 5 to give them, it'll be too late.
They need early intervention.
We need as much as we can give them as early as we can give it.
I've worked with that early intervention, autism early intervention.
My son was put into early intervention at 8
Okay.
months, and it made a huge difference. You know, I don't know if he would walk if it weren't for that. So,
Right.
but then from 3 to 20, up to 22, depending on the child, we have what we call an IEP, and that's about the child. So now we're going to look just at the child and say, you know, what are your strengths? What are you great at? What do you love? And then we're going to say, all right, where do you struggle? What can we help you with? What do you need more of? And depending on their age and their ability level, you know, kids that are just learning disabled, we might really only be looking at schools, school setting, academics, that kind of thing. But for a child that's more impaired, like my son, we might look at things like speech or how to get along with people, how to have a conversation, how to load a dishwasher, how to make your bed. So we give children through the educational process the skills they need to go out into the world. And so it looks different from child to child. So there's, you know, a law this thick in the state of California all about special ed. And that's what I do. I help families navigate that system of care.
Now, you were telling me, and I hope I get this straight, you're here to set me straight, but it's no longer special education, but that it's education with special services is more the thrust.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's not like a national thing, but that's how we're trying to get people to see it.
Okay. I love that.
Because children are children.
Children are children.
And when No Child Left Behind was rewritten this last time, it actually linked itself to special ed for the first time. And it actually designated special ed funds to be used in general ed. And we used them to prevent children from becoming disabled. So we have our 0 to 3 for our kids that we know are going to struggle. So it's prevention and early intervention. So it might just be a kid at risk, but it might be a kid with a known disability. But then around kindergarten through 3rd grade, we look at kids and say, wow, Johnny's not really catching on like the rest of the kids. Let's spend some time looking at him and try to figure out how he learns. And so a lot of times those kids that we used to wait until they were 2 years behind to serve, they never get that far behind because we're using that money now to use our specialty teachers, our RSP teachers, to work with the teachers and work with the children and help get them to where they need to be to move forward in school. Because if you don't capture them between kindergarten and 3rd grade, they're always going to be behind.
Right, they've fallen behind.
So, yeah, so there's the way I look at it and the way a lot of people look at it is we're educating children. We're not educating special ed kids and general ed kids. We're educating children, and we're doing it together. So,
is there any I know with families you work with siblings so they don't feel that all the attention is on this child. You work with them as a family unit. What is there in the education system to help kids in the mainstream, children in the mainstream, have awareness or
Well, we actually have a program called Kids on the Block.
Okay.
And they go out and talk about disabilities and social issues.
Okay.
So I'm blanking on one right now, like drugs. We have a junior high program that talks about drugs.
Okay.
But it could be about divorce, things like that. So we've got different troops that do different ones. I've got Dian, who has cancer, Lynn, who's a burn survivor. So all the puppets talk about different things, and so we'll have a typical puppet and a special puppet, and then they have a whole scripted conversation. And at the end of it, they take questions from the children, and we have found that to be really effective.
I'll bet it is.
Because they're talking to another kid. I've had principals write me letters or call me and say, "I didn't know that kid's parents were divorced," or "I didn't know that kid had a special ed brother."
Oh, we should have you come and do have a skit here.
Well, right now, the schools are no longer doing assemblies, and that's when Kids on the Block goes out.
I see.
So we don't really have the opportunity to use them anymore. But I do have some puppeteers I could probably bring up if you wanted to.
I think it would be fun. I would love to.
I bet I could find a couple that would do that.
Well, we're getting ready to take a break, so we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about Hearts Connection.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk with Dian Schneider of Hearts Connection. And you were mentioning that you have a couple fundraisers coming up, local here to Ridgecrest?
Sorry, not this time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But we have our annual Night of Inspiration coming up the first week of March. That's in Bakersfield at the DoubleTree. And all I can remember is his name's Oz, because I love that name. I think it's so cool. But he's a Paralympian who lost his
It sounded like a very interesting speaker.
Yeah,
he's going to be good.
Yeah, he is. So you can look on our website or call our office and get tickets for that. It's very reasonable, $80 a head, and that's a nice dinner, or $150 for a couple. And the rooms at the DoubleTree are not expensive, and they're very nice. So, and then our next one is our Bunko, and we just changed the date, so I have to cheat because I forget the new date. But it's May 21st.
Okay. Well, keep that
Saturday,
calendar
May
up.
21st,
Let me take a look at that calendar because you had some neat things on your Oh, this wasn't the calendar. Oh, this was the calendar I was looking at.
And we attach flyers in the back.
Oh, okay. Yes, because you have... okay, so aside from your fundraisers, you have some neat things going on. You had this sensory read at the library.
We do that.
Do you do that here in Ridgecrest as well?
We're not in Ridgecrest yet, but that's once I get a location and I get some parents together, then that's my next goal.
Let's talk about your location goals here in Ridgecrest. Tell us what you need, because maybe someone can hear this and help you out.
Just a place where parents can meet.
Weekly, monthly?
No, probably. We were meeting monthly, but that seemed to be a bit much for the families. And I actually have another group I work with up here that parents can go and hang out with them if they want. It's typically an autism focus, but they welcome all families. And they work a lot with my families when I can't get up here. But I was working with a 0 to 3 group, and the families just filter through so fast. So I was looking for more of a group that could handle all ages. So just a location that's wheelchair accessible. That
I'm thinking of does a community room work? Or?
Anything like that, yeah.
A church?
Just a place where families can get to. Yeah, I've used churches in the past. Just a place where we can get together maybe every other month or every quarter and have a nice long sit down and maybe some trainings. But I can also deal with the training separately with the schools if I need to, because the schools are very amenable to working with families.
Do schools have rooms you could use?
Not so much for support groups, but they do have rooms that I could use for trainings if I needed to, I believe.
I see.
Or used to in the past. It's been a while.
I see. Oh, because support groups are probably not at a school time.
Right. No, they're usually in the evening. It might be. I was having a group. I had a group that was meeting at lunchtime. But that would be hard to do in the school setting, too. So, I mean, even a restaurant that just has a quiet back room would be great.
Right.
Just something out of the mainstream. Because when parents are sharing, I don't really consider anybody else's business what they're talking about.
Right.
And we really hold to confidentiality so that parents can say what they need to say. Because that's how they serve their families. So I try to serve them by giving them some privacy and a place to meet.
And how do volunteers come into play with Hearts Connection?
You know, so many ways. We have a lot of people that actually come into our library in Bakersfield and do a lot of work for us. But if we have an event, you know, if I could find a meeting place and somebody wanted to be the person that maybe set up the room for the families.
I see.
Anything like that. Anytime we have an event, we always need a lot of volunteers. Sometimes
Okay.
it's just to help the families move food, you know, because they've got, you know, their kid in a wheelchair and they need somebody to help move plates to the table. So volunteers, we couldn't do it at Hearts without volunteers.
And do you also facilitate a volunteer to assist, or is that through the school district? To assist, like maybe as a tutor or with a, that's the school district. Okay. never
And
mind.
schools don't usually provide tutors either.
Oh,
But like if
okay.
you're talking about an aide in a classroom, that's a school district employee.
Okay.
You know, part of resource and referral, we can help parents find resources for tutors, but we don't provide them. So in Bakersfield, I would tell them call Cal State or BC, and if
Right,
you need a
right.
math tutor, ask for the head of the math department, and they'll usually have a student that's looking to do some of that, and that's usually how my parents get tutors.
I don't know if it was just coincidental, but I was just on Amazon and I happened to, it came up. Maybe, I don't know if I was on your webpage, but there's Amazon Smile is a place they will donate
Yes.
to, if someone purchases through Amazon Smile, Amazon will make a donation to Hearts Connection.
And I believe it's 1/2 of your total purchase. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, you know, we're a nonprofit in a hard economy, and we recently lost some funding due to all the changes at the state level through the regional center system. They're really struggling right now. And so a lot of resources that were being covered are no longer being covered. So yeah, all those little fundraisers add up, and they help us serve more families.
What haven't I asked you you would like to talk about or share with our viewers?
You know, maybe just to go back a step and say, Hearts is family.
Okay.
All of my employees are a parent of a child with special needs. So when you call Hearts, and all my volunteers pretty much, when you call Hearts and ask to speak to someone, you're speaking to someone who maybe doesn't have a child with the same disability, but knows what it's like to have a child with special needs in their home. You know, my son has very rare syndrome, so it's very rare that I come across somebody with the same thing. But he has so many different problems, somebody can usually hit on something that he's gone through, and I can say, been there, done that, and, you know,
How
tell
old
me
is
all
your
about it.
son?
He's 28 now, actually.
Is he?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have been one of the founding parents. And we actually still have 2 founding parents at Hearts. So we're definitely encouraging new, younger families to move in, because someday I'd like to retire. But, you know, that's what Hearts is to me. It's family. It's a place where you can go. Nobody's going to judge you because your child's melting down. And you're going to walk in and start crying, and somebody's going to hand you a tissue and put an arm around your shoulders. And that's what Hearts is. And it's what we've been from day one. It's been what we are to each other, and it's what who we are to whoever comes in.
Yeah,
So
it's needed. Well, thank you so much. You've come a long way from Bakersfield, and I'm so glad you joined us today here on Ridgecrest Talk.
thank you for having me. I love Ridgecrest.
Yeah, I do too. So we'll look forward to finding out when you get your place where it's going to be, and we'll get that out.
That would be great.
Let people know where your meeting place is going to be.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining
thank
me.
you.
Yes.